Hey, welcome to Beer and Gear.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
I mean, we're feeling pretty good over here. I've got Shiner Bock in my hand.
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Kris.
Sure, no problem.
I appreciate the beer. It's good to see your face.
It is good to be back.
What are you drinking?
I have another one from Michigan. It's Dragon's Milk, the stout. It's bourbon barrel aged.
See, I like the bourbon barrel aged.
Yes.
Like I've done beer bourbon barrel aged, and I've done wine bourbon barrel aged.
Okay.
You ever
Not wine.
experienced that? Are you much of a wine drinker? Have we talked about that?
No.
I like wine.
Okay.
And there's a few of them. One of them's like the Thief or Cooper or something. I don't remember. But it comes in a really cool looking bottle. It's like that short fat wine bottle.
Okay, yeah.
Makes you feel like you're drinking at a tavern somewhere in London in the
There you go. Yeah.
1700s. Anyway, and it's a wine, like some sort of red blend
Okay.
that's aged in bourbon barrels, and it's really good.
Okay.
I'll try to get the name of it for next time.
Yeah, I'm afraid the extent of wine in our house is when we're stepping through the Lord's Supper with the kids. And we try to keep it official and not just grape juice.
Yeah, right?
And so we pour just a little bit, take a swig, and the rest of the bottle tends to go down the drain.
Yeah. You look Lutheran.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all my other blonde-headed friends that are of the Lutheran persuasion.
I borrowed the idea from the Catholics.
There you go. For sure. I've only done actual wine with communion a few times, and it's never like good wine, which I feel like is a mistake. Like,
Sure.
it seems like if you're taking communion, shouldn't this be like the best wine you have?
I think that's why the Catholics do what they do. It's a very specific wine
Yeah.
done for only that.
Yeah. Hopefully it's good. I've never actually had.
Never had it.
Anyway, partaking of it. Let's just stick to beer.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Is it good?
It's good.
Good.
It's good.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes, thank you, Jason. This is the second one that he's given me recently.
Okay.
I had done the red label, which was I
Yes.
believe a porter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was I believe it was bourbon barrel aged as well.
Michigan, man.
Yep.
All right. Well,
Yep.
got to log that one away.
Yep. Dragon's Milk.
There you go. Go find it. Anyway. Or you already know about it because we just,
Yep. You know about it now for sure.
Yep. All right. Today we're talking about Wi-Fi.
Yes, we are.
All things Wi-Fi. And if you're sitting at home thinking like, my router was just being weird, you might be talking about the wrong thing. Because I will say, you only got 2 of these listed, but the 3 pieces of gear that you probably have at home that you either are the same piece of gear or they're all split out that you don't know that you have are a router,
Yes.
a modem,
Yes.
and an AP.
Yes. And depending on what you're using, there's also a switch.
Switch, yes. Okay, so 4. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So usually router and switches combined, usually in home situations, modem, router, switch combined.
Yeah, especially if you get it from your ISP.
Yeah. And then especially like if you're thinking I only have one box, it's because if you have wireless access to your internet at home, you have a router or a modem. I'm trying to do this in
Modem,
order.
router, combo.
Modem, router combo
Yes.
with an AP built into it.
Yes.
What do these words mean, Kris?
Well, start with Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
It really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
I was surprised. All these years, I thought it was short for something.
well.
All it is just a marketing acronym that was thrown together.
Yeah, you said that on here. This is a marketing acronym, but this obviously is playing off of hi-fi.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, you could
Which
think of it as
means,
wireless fidelity.
yeah, high fidelity is hi-fi. If you've ever heard of hi-fi when it comes to like stereo,
Yes.
whatever. But wireless, like Wi-Fi, wireless fidelity is not a thing. Like,
No, not really.
not really. So Wi-Fi was just like a catchy thing.
Absolutely.
It's not. It's like a brand. It's like Xerox.
They did a good job because it stuck.
Yeah, it's stuck hard. Like nobody
It's not
talks
going
about
away.
it in any other way. There's not. I talk about copying paper instead of Xeroxing things. That only lasted for a while.
Yep.
Wi-Fi is not going anywhere.
No, it's not. It is not. So I guess we'll kind of get into what we've got here. We've talked about if you got your hardware directly from your internet provider or ISP.
ISP, Internet Service Provider.
Service provider,
There
yes.
you go.
You probably have a poor experience, in my opinion.
And poor experience, number one, because every ISP, it seems like, is a poor experience. You may have a better experience than you did with your last guy,
Yes.
but none of them are like knocking it out of the park.
No, they're not. They're not. And
Come on,
then
guys.
the gear that they're buying, I'm sure they're looking for best price.
Best price. There's some reliability they got to be looking for because
Sure.
the number of questions that they have
Yeah.
to answer is just ridiculous.
Yeah. If you like to twist the geek knob, then you're not going to want their standard hardware.
No.
So,
No. And why is that?
because you can't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you even remotely want to get in and tweak things, make changes,
Mhm.
add additional Wi-Fi networks, some of them, I guess, will technically let you have a guest network.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to in any way get involved on the network side, you're not doing it with their gear. That's it. You can't even change the password to the Wi-Fi most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It is stuck on what is on the sticker on the box.
It's on the sticker.
It's on the sticker.
Yeah, that's the hard. My parents got when they got Wi-Fi at their house that they live in now. I was looking for the sticker on the box. It was not on the box. The sticker was on the router.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay, guys, like,
Yes. That's why it's imperative to change the password
you gotta
first thing.
figure this out because that's terrible.
Yep.
Anyway,
And
do our listeners know that you're supposed to be changing your passwords at all? We haven't even talked about
I sure
that.
hope they do with all the hacks that we've seen.
Guys.
Yes, do change your passwords. Change them often. If you're not going to change them often, at least make them fairly long,
Mm-hmm.
and then at least change it once a year.
Yeah.
I used to not be a fan of password managers, but as I'm getting older,
So I'm getting older.
it's getting
and
harder
there's
to remember
more
those
and
passwords.
more passwords.
Yeah, because you don't want to just reuse the same password.
Oh my gosh, no.
Don't do that.
That's terrible.
Your Wi-Fi password should not be your bank password.
Oh,
Don't do that.
don't do that.
So yeah, if you, regardless of whether you have you can't change theirs, but if you go buy something from Best Buy, like Linksys or D-Link, please change the password. That's the very first thing you should do once it's actually working.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, we were talking about not settling for what the ISP gives you with gear. You don't have to go, like, find some ridiculous, like, you don't have to have a,
No, it doesn't have to be
CDW account to
Correct.
get this.
correct.
Like,
You do not have to have Cisco gear
yeah,
or Meraki or Aruba or whoever you may have potentially heard of.
right. There's a few things you want to look for, though.
Yes.
And what are those things?
Well, for one, that you can actually manage it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you'll want to look at is kind of roughly the size of your house. If you just go by an all-in-one Linksys or D-Link,
What they give you when you, if you use your ISP
yeah, if you use your ISP
gear,
you want to try to set it as, I guess, as close to the center of your house as you can to try to get the best coverage.
yeah, and it's going to give you about 1,000 square feet of coverage.
Yeah, at best 1,500.
Yeah.
Because once you start going through walls, depending on what your walls are made of and
Mhm.
the thickness and any potential insulation in there,
All
you're
my
going to kill the signal.
All my walls are concrete and lead, man.
Oh, you need a AP on every side of the wall.
That's right. I just got straight up bunkers
There you go.
every room.
feel like we know somebody that built a house like that.
Yes, we do. And they probably do have APs in every room.
They probably do. Yes. So, in my opinion, don't take the ISP's hardware. Go buy your own.
Yeah.
Go buy a modem. Don't pay them that monthly rental.
No, gosh, no.
Don't do that. Modems last a long time.
Yeah.
And
you will pay for it in the first year.
Oh, absolutely. Because they'll charge
Doesn't cost
you
that much.
$5 to $10 a month to rent it.
$10, absolutely easy.
Yeah.
Easy $10 for them. Just waste of money for you.
Yeah, you can pick up a great modem for under $100. Easy.
What are some things to be looking for to future-proof your modem? I'm thinking of one thing in particular.
Well, you've got to look at the model of, or I guess the version of DOCSIS.
Yeah.
Please don't ask me to say what all the letters mean. Just know that it has to do with the way that the modem is talking into their network.
Yeah. You want to make sure that it is compatible with
your service
provider, which is a thing that you can look up on your service provider's website. They are going to have that.
Or if you have a death wish, you can call in and wait.
Don't do that. It should be on their website.
It should be, yeah. So at a minimum, you're going to want DOCSIS 3. Ideally, you would probably want to at least pick up DOCSIS 3.1.
Yeah, I was going to say 3.2.
If you can get a 3.2 and they support it, that's great.
Yeah.
But even if you get DOCSIS 3.0, that will still support a full gig up and down.
Yeah. And that's like a gig up and down, I would say is probably minimum of what you want to buy at this point.
Yeah. I guess the one other thing you do have to take a look at when you're buying your modem is the number of channels. More channels means more speed. So I would buy more speed, more power.
Now, wait, I thought that my internet service provider was the one who decided how much speed I had.
Well, they kind of do in the end.
I was setting you up, man.
You have an illusion of speed.
You have an illusion of speed.
Yes. So get at least 32 channels. That way you can effectively get, if you have the luxury of it, of the ability, you can get that sweet gig up, gig down. Take advantage of it. So, yeah. It's there.
So, like, is HBO one of the channels that I get?
No, not that kind of channel. Nice try.
Mean?
So,
ESPN?
Without getting too geeky, more channels means more bandwidth. They do a process called channel bonding, which makes all those channels behave as if it's one giant channel.
Oh, you mean like Disney and National Geographic and all those guys are one channel right now? Is that what you're talking about?
They're trying. So these channels will run a little bit separate from your cable.
Sorry, this is me trying to
that's okay.
muddy this as much as possible.
I'm a little too far removed from working for Cox to remember quite how they did some of the channeling. But I do know that you had, I want to say at that time, there was at least 8 channels for data, and there was possibly 4 channels for video. And depending upon what package you had, determine which of those channels was potentially active for the service that you were looking for, because a given channel would come, or a given TV channel would go down a specific video channel with your service.
Yeah.
So that's modem.
Just jumped right over the head.
Yes. So skip the service provider equipment, get your own modem.
Yeah.
At a minimum, get your own router. If you're going to buy in now, I would at least buy into Wi-Fi 6E if you can get it.
Yeah.
Maybe absolute worst case, Wi-Fi 6. I would not do anything what's referred to as Wi-Fi 5.
Okay, so you just said Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. What are all the Wi-Fis? Because I remember when we just called it Wi-Fi.
Yes, well, that's all it used to be.
Yeah.
So there's 7 that I would say that are now official, because they just finally released the certification process for Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi 8 is
burgeoning
out there, but nowhere near ready.
Bleeding edge.
Yeah, so we'll go back to the wee days of the internet with what is now referred to as Wi-Fi 1. Back then, it was 802.11a. and it gave you a whopping 54 megabits per second.
I don't know anybody that used that A. It was just 802.11.
802.11, that's true. And that was typically referring to Wi-Fi version 2, which is 802.11b.
B.
11 megabits. So not as fast, but it had punch. And you could push it way farther
Okay.
than you could A, because A uses 5 gigahertz. As you go up in frequency, it takes more power to get the same distance as a lower frequency.
But
So that's the nature of...
we'll talk about the pluses of the higher frequency later. Go ahead.
So you get into Wi-Fi version 3, good old 802.11g.
Also in 2.4.
Also 2.4, yes. But it got it up to 54 megabits. So it got basically B up to the equivalent of A.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we jumped to Wi-Fi version 4 or 802.11.
Big jump.
That's when it got interesting, because now you can leverage 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz and get it. Now, this is theoretical, but you could technically get a maximum of 600 megabits per second.
Yeah.
I never knew anybody who was getting that.
Sure.
So, but it was a nice marketing number.
It was. I remember when N came out.
Yes.
And it was like, what?
Yeah, I would say G was kind of that first one that a lot of people were probably buying into.
Yeah.
And then N, it really started to explode.
Yeah.
And then we jumped to Wi-Fi 5.
Yeah.
802.11 AC.
AC.
It doesn't keep you cool, though.
Air conditioner not involved.
Again, theoretical numbers here. A maximum of 6,933 megabits. Yes, that is the magic number for those who are listening.
6.9 gigabits.
Gigabits.
Gigawatts.
Gigawatts. There you go. Again, using 2.4 and 5 gigahertz.
Yeah.
When we get into what's called spatial streams, we'll explain how they made some of these magic numbers happen.
Yeah.
From there, you go to Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. That is referred to as 802.11ax.
You lost me.
Well, that to me, this is the minimum where you should buy in if you're
Right
buying
now,
gear.
yeah.
If you can afford the 6E, or even if you can afford 7, go for it. But the average person, at least get Wi-Fi 6, if not 6E.
Yeah.
It'll give you some good future proofing. Again, a potential maximum of 9,608 megabits per second using 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Now, the difference in 6 and 6E is 6E introduced 6 gigahertz.
Yeah.
And that's how they're actually achieving some of those higher, ridiculous speeds.
I mean, I was going to say, I feel like it should be 2.45 and 7.5 gigahertz. I mean, why are we doing this weirdness?
We wanted the 6 gigabits.
6 gigabits.
So you may be kind of figuring out here, as you go up in frequency, there's more bandwidth to take advantage of.
More bandwidth, more channels.
Yes, more power.
Everything. More power.
More power. And then you've got Wi-Fi 7. There has been some gear out for a little while with this. None of it is officially certified. So,
well, it's faster than what we can.
Oh, it's faster than the 6 and the 6E.
Yeah, and it's faster than what the internet service providers are.
Well, yeah, I mean, with AC, technically, you're already faster than what most service providers would give you. Although I guess there are a few fiber providers that I know that are pushing 5 gigabit.
Really?
Yes. So
I haven't met
here.
any of them.
No, they're not around here. I know they're in Austin.
We're in Tyler. It's not. We don't have that.
Yeah, don't get me started.
That's not one of the options on the little.
Oh, don't get me started on how backwards some of our stuff is for as big a city as we are.
I'm just saying.
Okay. And then coming at some point in the future, Wi-Fi 8.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Breaking news. 802.11
BN.
N is in Nancy.
Nancy.
A maximum of 100,000 megabits per second.
Bravo November.
Yes, Bravo November. There you go.
100 gigs.
Yes, essentially.
Gigabits.
Gigabits.
Not
roughly.
gigabytes.
Not gigabytes, gigabits.
That's different.
Yes, there's a big difference between bits and a byte.
Divide by 8.
Divide by 8, absolutely. So again, 2.4, 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz.
Yeah.
So there's all the Wi-Fi versions and some some of how they break down.
Are we going to put this on the show notes?
Absolutely.
I feel like we need to put this on the show notes because we just threw a lot of numbers.
We did.
Without
Well, that's why I would say
breathing
depending on
too much.
where we're at.
Yeah.
And dial in that nerd knob.
Yeah. Check out the
Possibly
show
a
notes if you
4
want
to 6.
Yeah.
Because the nerd knob goes up to 11.
It goes up to 11 for sure, just like a sound box.
Yes.
What's up, Jason?
Yes. Okay, so from there, let's jump into channels.
Yeah, channels. I was about to say we got to go backwards for a second.
That's okay. Did we jump anything else?
We
Nope.
did.
Nope.
We did a little bit.
Well,
We didn't talk about. Sorry, that's back on channels. You've got 2 sections. Channel width is what I was going back to. Channels. Let's go to channels.
Yeah, we'll go to channels.
So 2.4 gigahertz.
Yes, 11 usable channels in the U.S. 1 through 11.
So in case you haven't realized this, there's this little. I almost said company. There's this little federal agency that likes to tell you where you can and can't be on the spectrums
Yes.
of.
Shout out to the FCC.
Yeah, the FCC they're awesome. We are not trying to pick any fights
No.
with anybody like that.
Slight sidebar, talking about government agencies.
Yeah.
On the way to drop the kids off, and my phone
The
stopped.
actual kids.
Yeah, the actual kids, and my phone stopped working.
Yeah, it did. Oh my gosh, that was terrifying.
But here's the deal. If anybody that knows me, I'm not a big fan of the government. I saw a video of the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. I can't say anything good about her, so I just won't say.
just keep your mouth shut.
Yes, she basically said it is not our responsibility to bring prices down. And although she's technically right, that isn't what the government should do. When you cause them to go up, you should be on the hook to bring them down.
That's
so
true.
it sent me on a rant with my kids, and I could see my kids going, "Oh boy, here it goes."
The
again.
eyes are rolling back into the back of the head.
Exactly. And about the time that my phone dropped, I said, if they don't keep it up, it may be time for a revolution.
And then your phone dropped?
Boom, my phone signal dropped. And I'm like, oh, they're listening to me.
You're the reason.
They're going to come get me.
You're the reason AT&T just dropped everybody all at once in the state.
Yeah. And they're still not talking about what happened.
They're not.
So,
and I don't know that there's any hope of that.
Early story was a potential solar flare.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see.
I feel like if it was a solar flare, we'd know faster than that, unless they got shut up by somebody else.
It started at 2 a.m.
AT&T would definitely blame it on something else if they could right now.
Absolutely.
Because right now, they're just on the hook for being incompetent.
No, I'm not getting on that soapbox either. All right, back to channels. I got to get away from this. I'm gonna start preaching.
You guys, it's not good. It's not good. As soon as we hang up with this call, whatever, we're gonna be talking about this.
Oh, so, I'm sure. Anyway. I'm sure. Okay, so let's hop back to channels. So 2.4 gigahertz, 11 usable channels.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that you should just use any old channel.
Right.
There is only 3 that are technically usable that don't interfere with other channels.
Right.
Channel 1, Channel 6, Channel 11.
Yeah.
So that joker, not too far away, who's using Channel 3, I'm not a fan of yours because you're stepping on 1 and 6.
You're stepping on both 1 and 6.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we explain this in a way that makes sense to somebody who just heard you say 11 usable channels and really there's only 3?
There's only 3. So we'll have to put something in the show notes so you could see the visual.
Yeah.
So within the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, they show you the channels and they show you the frequency starts here, ends here.
Yeah.
Those channels technically, for all intents and purposes, they overlap.
Yeah.
Channels next to each other. So channel 1 kind of overlaps with channel 2, 2 with 3, and so on.
Yeah.
And because you have what are considered co-channels there, you get co-channel interference.
Yeah.
So if I have a radio on 1 and another nearby radio on 2, they're not going to be happy. My experience is not going to be great.
No.
So if you do have a D-Link or a Linksys that you can go in and change it, do turn off the automatic channel because I've seen those choose those in between channels because
Just randomly.
it looks clear. Don't do that. Be a good neighbor. Don't do that.
If you're, I don't know, I'm trying to come up with like a way for people to understand this. If you're driving down the highway and you're just remember if you can, when we had the knobs that you would turn to find the channel on the
FM AM, baby.
FM AM knob to get the channel on the radio. You would, if you turn it close to a channel, you can hear
the next channel.
Like you can hear what, like the through the static and everything, you can kind of hear something faint. You're not exactly on the channel, but you kind of hear it. Now imagine if you've got two weak signals, and this is important because on FM AM, like the part of it is how weak the channel is.
Correct.
On whether or not it'll actually do this, because you can have two channels right next to each other and you can hear both of them as long as they are pumping that wattage at you.
Correct.
But most of the time that's not what's happening. So if you imagine if you were in between two channels and you could hear both of them, that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, you kind of get that bleed over.
And that Wi-Fi has to have a very strong signal.
Correct.
In order to pass data without dropping packets.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. More interference just basically means you're potentially going to have to keep retransmitting to get what you need.
Yeah.
So stay on the right channels.
Yeah.
And so where that kind of plays in too, if you're designing a network, depending on the size of your building, you need 3, 4, 5. So now as you're laying those out, now you've got to think that through. If I'm putting this one on 1, I'm putting this on 6, I'm putting on this 11. Now when I put that fourth radio, I need to put it to where it doesn't step on number 1, but it could, it doesn't coexist with number 1.
Right.
But it could overlap on the 2 that are running 6 and 11, and I'm fine. And then if I have more radios, then I keep doing this to try to space it out.
And you can see how, like, in your house, this is not a problem.
No. Well, depending on how geeky you are.
Wow. Let me tell you what. No. Not nearly that geeky. Not at my house.
I'm a little geeky.
Well, I mean, a little bit. I do have 3 APs at my house. I should say that.
I have 2 that are functional, 1 that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, there you go. But who has the money for that? Anyway.
Okay. All right. So with that, that's kind of where 2.4s exist. We've already talked about the overlap.
Did you talk about microwaves?
No, but that's coming up. Again, I want to reiterate, use 1, 6, and 11. Please be kind to your neighbors.
Because your frequencies,
I go to the Blockbuster analogy, be kind, rewind.
There you go.
So be kind. Don't
Whether or not you believe it
non-standard.
because you walked out of your house and lost Wi-Fi signal, you are close enough to your neighbors to mess with their signal as well.
Oh, yes. And if you look for Wi-Fi, you'll see your other people.
Yeah.
So
easily.
That takes me to one quick sidebar. Do have fun with your network names.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the best part.
Don't just leave it plain Jane.
No, you can't. I mean, it's Suddenlink, whatever, dot blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
which I guess isn't even a thing anymore. Yeah. That's not a Wi-Fi name.
Yeah, if you come by my house, you will see FBI surveillance van number 33. That's me. So have as much fun with it as you want.
And now my wife's going, that's where he got that.
Yeah. So I guess, a couple other things here to keep in mind. There are other things that do operate in that 2.4 gigahertz range that can cause interference.
Okay.
Namely, microwave.
Yeah.
So if you have a radio or access point relatively close to your microwave and you start noticing bizarre behaviors.
Why does my Netflix cut out every time I make popcorn?
Yeah, it gets a little choppy. What's going on? You may need to consider relocating your radio.
Maybe.
So,
all right, go ahead and do it.
Another thing that you, again, depending on how geeky you are, if you're in the home automation and you use Zigbee for connecting lights,
we're going there.
Whatever, Zigbee operates in 2.4 gigahertz as well.
Uh-huh.
So be careful.
It is a very popular side. Okay, we're going to go on a side quest here.
Go ahead.
This became a big deal with all of us musicians out there when they first came out with wireless. Not first came out with wireless. That's ridiculous. When they started making, I'm going to go ahead and say lower budget wireless, especially like instrument stuff.
Okay.
Most of it was focused in the 2.4 gigahertz. And I had a whole bunch of people that were like, wireless guitars, wireless, like trying to go wireless with your guitar, trying to go wireless is trash. You don't need to do it at all. This was the problem. Everything was on 2.4.
Yep.
Everything, like the Wi-Fi router, if the Wi-Fi router was anywhere near your gear, which it's always near your gear because you're trying to do stuff on Wi-Fi the entire time that you're playing music, it was always interfering.
Yep.
And remember, 2.4, 3 usable channels.
3 usable channels. So I would assume they use 2.4 to get higher than 900 megahertz.
Yes.
So again, more potential bandwidth, so better quality sound in theory.
Better quality sound. Everybody was going for fidelity.
Yes.
But what they got was all this, like, technology that's being put into cell phones at the time was then becoming, oh, well, this could work with music.
Yes.
And it all just went downhill.
Yes. So that's the story of 2.4.
Anyway.
All right. So moving on, 5 gigahertz.
5 gigahertz comes as the savior to all.
That was the intent, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So in the U.S., 22 usable channels. Oh, I guess one other thing we skipped, 2.4 gigahertz, best case scenario, 300 feet of coverage. Best case. 5 gigahertz, you're talking about 100 feet of coverage. So if anybody has played with this at home, you'll notice that you have those great speeds when you're on 5. Mm-hmm. You get too far away, it slows down because you fall back to 2.4.
Yep.
So,
not seeing a whole lot of just 5. Got to have 5 and 2.4.
5 and 2.4. So what gets interesting in here is radar. 12 of the 22 channels exist in the spectrum for some of the radar systems. So those are referred to as DFS channels. The way those work is your radio...
DFS, never mind. We're not going to...
Yeah, we're not going to go there. So your radio can exist on one of those channels, but if it detects radar, it has to drop with no longer than 10 seconds and get out of the way.
Right.
So it does not interfere with that radar. So if anybody's ever been poking in their system logs and they see radar detected, that's what's going on.
That's what they're talking about.
That's what they're talking about. So
not the MASH character.
No, not MASH. No. So the other thing that's nice in 5 gigahertz is none of the channels technically overlap.
Yeah, so there's 12, or there's 22. 12 of them are radar, 10 usable channels.
10. And so as you can see, more channels, especially if you live in an apartment complex.
Right.
More channels is more better.
More. Thank you.
Yes. You want more channels so you can get away from what your neighbors are using and try to improve your experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So from there, we jumped to 6 gigahertz, which again came out with 6E. Still reasonably new in the Wi-Fi piece. Most, I would say probably phones within the last 2 to 3 years for sure are probably going to have 6E built in.
Right.
So this gets really crazy. 59 usable channels in the U.S.
Pretty good.
That's game-changing if you live in an apartment.
Right.
Absolutely amazing. No channel overlap, just like with 5 gigahertz. So depending on how many neighbors you have, there should be no reason that y'all would be on the same channel.
Yeah.
There's no reason. Unless they're just being a jerk.
Yeah, well.
Some of those neighbors do exist, I'm afraid.
We're not going to talk about being a good neighbor on this yet. All right, let's talk about channel width.
Channel width. Here we go. So this is where things get a little Interesting. We'd already kind of alluded to you've got to plan your channels carefully.
Yes.
Because again, you want to avoid multiple radios utilizing the same channel next to each other so you don't have that interference.
Right. So this width is like what? An inch?
I'm not even going to go
Okay.
with that. Moving on. So channels and channel width is ultimately used to get you more speed, more power.
Okay.
I hear Tim Allen in my head.
Whoa.
So you get into what's called spatial streams.
I don't think so, Tim.
Yeah. Which has to do with active connections to a given radio. And if I remember correctly, Wi-Fi 7, I don't remember if it was 7 or 8, so please don't hold me to this. One of them, you could actually be connected to multiple radios, which gets a little interesting because now you can pull data from 2 different radios. It gets intriguing what you can achieve.
This isn't okay. So we're going to talk in a little bit about like MIMO.
Yes.
And
multi-user MIMO or Mu MIMO, whatever you call it.
Yeah, this is not. Okay. So Mu MIMO is going to be coming from the other direction, talking about radio talking to multiple end users. You're talking about an end user using multiple radios.
Multiple
at the same
radios,
time.
yeah. So don't hold me to it. It's either Wi-Fi 7. I'm leaning towards 7, but it could have been something I was reading on 8. So forgive me if I'm calling it wrong. So, but it's an intriguing new
sounds
technology.
Very interesting.
Especially in a business where you're more likely to have multiple radios, and depending on where you're officed, you might be right in between 2 and can take advantage of it.
Which, I mean, honestly, your network guy is trying to minimize that right now.
Correct.
But you're saying he may not be trying to minimize that in the future.
Depending on what he's trying to achieve in terms of your connection speed.
Wow.
That could start to change the way we do some of our design.
Now I'm just, because what you don't want right now are like really big hotspots in your network mapping.
Yeah, you do want to keep them a reasonable amount apart.
Yeah.
So they're not stepping on each other.
Right.
But you do need some overlap.
Right.
To help with roaming.
Yes.
So
that it's a clear, like you're not falling off and then picking up again.
Correct. So roaming is a whole nother animal. I didn't include that in here, but just real quick to know, there are different standards for roaming. If you're going to turn it on, make sure all your devices support the version that you're turning on, or you could potentially have devices that just can't connect.
Wow.
Because they don't talk that language.
Yeah, I'm not, sorry, I'm still back on the
multiple radios. Your mind is blown.
I just didn't know that was coming. That's great.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's great. I'm still trying to figure it out. Okay, go ahead.
I would say if it's implemented right, it probably is going to be great.
Yeah.
So, and then when we get into the wider the channel, the more bandwidth.
Yeah.
So 2.4 gigahertz uses 20 megahertz channels.
Okay.
So you've got a finite amount of data that you can push down that.
Yeah.
So you can't bond multiple channels together.
No, they're interfering with each other.
Yes. Well, I probably shouldn't say that. I think there is technically some older that could do MIMO. I'll confirm that and add that in the show notes.
Yeah, we need to, yeah.
So
don't jump on that bandwagon.
Yes. Yeah, don't beat me up. Okay, so you jump to 5 gigahertz. This is where it starts to get intriguing.
Yep.
You can do 20 megahertz, just like 2.4, or you could bond 2 of those together, basically, and achieve a 40 megahertz channel.
That's some slick math right there.
Yes, it is. More bandwidth. It's amazing.
More better.
Then you could bond 2 40s.
Or 420s.
Or 420s, however you want to take that. For 80 megahertz, again, you're achieving more potential bandwidth. And then ending with 160 megahertz channels.
Yeah.
So you have the potential to really grow this out in terms of the potential bandwidth that you can achieve when you're connected to the radio. Again, with this, you've got to be, now most newer devices, you don't have to worry about this, but there was a time you had to be careful in how wide you made your channels.
Right.
Because some older equipment may not have gone beyond 40 megahertz.
Yeah.
And as soon as you turn on 80,
Sure, that makes sense.
they're like, I don't have anything.
What
here.
is that?
What do you want me to do? So,
Well, okay, and let's make sure and understand, like, that bonding that is great for, you know, your speed and how much you can handle and everything. Like, that's awesome, but it's not like the number of channels actually increased, because if you bond them, then you are actually decreasing the number of channels that are available.
Yes, thank you. And that leads me into the next section.
Oh, okay.
So we said with 5 gigahertz, there were 22 usable channels.
Yeah.
When you go to 14 gigahertz, that actually only shrinks to 14, which doesn't seem like the math works.
Yeah.
But it does. And then when you go to 80 gigahertz, now you do truly cut in half.
Sorry, 40 gigahertz.
40 gives you 14.
From 5 gigahertz, if you do two bonded, like if you bond 20s,
yes, to have 40
all the way
megahertz
across
channels.
to have 40 megahertz channels, then you only have 29. Or sorry, 14.
You
29 is on
14
the
usable channels.
14.
And then if you bump it again to 80 megahertz, you have 7 usable channels.
Yeah, which is like a third.
Yes. But again, as you bond these and you get more megahertz, you get more bandwidth.
Yeah.
And then ending with the 60 megahertz, and there you've only got 160. 3 usable channels.
Yeah.
So more bandwidth is amazing, but means fewer channels. So as you grow those channels, that can complicate your design.
Right.
Depending on how many radios you have to work with.
Right.
So now we jump to the newer 6 gigahertz. Again, it can use 20, it can use 40, it could use 80, it could use 160, and it now introduces 320 megahertz.
For the ridiculous people out there,
yes,
3 channels of 320.
3 channels of
320.
320. Yeah. So with this, if you do the 40 megahertz,
29.
You've got 29.
That's where the 29 was.
Correct. If you do 80, you've got 14 usable. 160, you've got 7. And as we just said, 320, you've got 3 available.
Yep.
So again, as you increase these channels, be mindful of how many radios you have and how you're designing this out.
Yeah. So if you only got 3 radios,
go 320.
Go to town.
If your devices can handle it,
yeah,
knock yourself out.
If your devices can handle it.
The other thing to keep in mind, though, as you're increasing your channels and your number is shrinking, your neighbors may not be using those bigger channel bondings,
yeah.
and they're going to be on the 20s, maybe
Yeah.
the 40s, and they now could potentially step over whichever channel you're using.
Mm.
So again, a lot of this to keep in mind, depending on how geeky you are,
Yeah.
and how you design your network.
Yeah. It's important.
It is, absolutely is. We're all just used to go buy it from Best Buy, plug it in, and boom, it just works.
Yeah. You got a guy who's listening to this and like, wait a minute, I was just trying to not use my ISPs.
Correct.
We turned up that dial
We did a little bit.
a little bit.
Okay, so now let's jump to spatial streams, or another way to say that is how many consecutive connections do you have to the radio?
So single radio, how many devices can connect
Yes, at one time.
at one time?
So when you go way back before MIMO
Excuse
and
me.
multi-user MIMO,
Yeah.
one device at a time.
Yeah. Now, super fast connections, like even at their slowest, you say one device can connect at a time.
Correct.
That's not, hey, I've connected my device to this AP, so
Well, there's caveats.
okay.
There's caveats. So if you think back to the beginning, 802.11b, that was kind of where it was what we call round robin. One device can transmit and receive to the radio at a time. So your laptop would do its thing, then my laptop would do its thing, and then your phone, and then my phone, and then back to your laptop. And it had to basically go in a round robin circle, trying to give everybody fair airtime.
Yeah.
So everybody could try to do something.
But let's talk about how fast that was happening.
Oh, it's happening crazy fast.
Crazy fast.
Crazy fast. But
It's not like I get it for an hour, then you get it for an hour.
correct.
No.
Correct. But those of us that are old enough that we have some gray hair and remember the old times,
Mm.
it was slow.
Yeah. It definitely had that, like, my page is going to load in a second
Yes.
that I am looking at.
Not as bad as the dial-up modem.
Give it a minute.
So.
Oh my gosh, dial up.
So obviously by today's standards, if it's only one device at a time, not that big a deal. You've probably got a really nice internet speed, especially if you're increasing your channels. So that's the other benefit to channels is more bandwidth. Your device talks faster, which means my device can get to it quicker and talk faster and so on. So from there, they introduced single user multi-in, multi-out.
MIMO.
Yes, MIMO.
That's what we did. Sue MIMO.
Big deal. Still round robin.
Still jumping
from device
me,
to device
you,
to device.
Device.
Yes, but it allowed me to have, depending on how the radio was, I could have 2 connections to that radio. I could have 3 or possibly as many as 4 simultaneous connections.
In and out.
Yes. So again, I'm getting my bandwidth faster, so my device can hand off for the radio to go to the next device. So again, we're speeding this thing up. And then where it gets really intriguing is when they introduce multi-user MIMO. Now your laptop and my laptop can talk to that same radio at the same time.
Yeah.
Now we may not be able to talk to all of the antennas at the same time. You may get 2 and I get 2.
Right.
But now, again, we're making it faster. Multiple devices talking at the same time.
What do you mean antennas, Chris? My device, my AP looks like a discus.
Yeah, mine looks like a spaceship too. So if you
There's no antennas.
If you take it apart, they're in there.
What?
Yes, they look like little pieces of foil. Almost.
I don't believe you. I'm gonna have to break that plastic apart.
Well, I'll have to find the one that we broke apart at work today and show you because it was a dead radio.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
It's actually intriguing how small the antennas truly are and what
they're not the big fins.
No.
Because we've all seen the octopus hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, when you've got those external antennas, that is not a pleasant sight.
Well, that's what the people jump up and
yes,
high five them when they're walking by
and break them off.
Like, why are we doing this? You don't have to touch everything.
No,
it's not yours.
No. Now, external antenna could technically get you better coverage.
Technically, but you also have people hitting it.
Yeah, you do. If they damage it, it's no good. So that is the benefit of multi-user MIMO. Again, still round robin, trying to get everybody fair airtime, but now more than one device can connect to that radio.
Nice.
So that was a really nice,
it's a big deal.
Upgrade. Oh, it was. It was. So getting into some of the last bit here, now we get into placement.
Placement of the
radio or the access point.
Did we ever say access point, or did we just say AP the entire time?
We probably said AP. Or I was saying radio.
Radio, access point, AP, all the same thing.
Yes, all the jargon.
Go ahead.
Okay. So your access point, whether it's baked in the all-in-one router,
right,
or it's an independent access point or radio,
right,
it has what's referred to as a radiation pattern, not necessarily the bad kind.
What just happened?
Yes. Why is my skin getting warm?
Oh, no.
So basically what that means, it travels in a horizontal plane and a vertical plane.
Yes.
So most radios are going to produce that basically in the shape of a glazed donut. And you can imagine it just expanding until it basically...
I just got hungry.
Yeah, me too. Is Dunkin' Donuts out there?
Yeah, beer and donuts. What am I, Homer?
So that kind of expands out again until that signal degrades enough that it's not usable. There are different antennas that can do different coverage patterns. We'll get into those in a little bit. So most access points are meant, in my opinion, or designed to mount flush on your ceiling.
Yeah.
So that the antennas are parallel with your ceiling and your floor.
Right.
That is how you get the best coverage out of that device, unless it has some special antennas that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I doubt that it would. That would most likely be...
You say best coverage. I say widest coverage.
Best coverage, widest coverage, yes.
If you have a 2-floor home, you got to be careful with the discs, right?
You do.
because they're not as up and down as the old ones used to be.
No, and just because you put it up on the highest level doesn't mean you're going to get a great experience down on the bottom.
No. It's a very different, your floors are very different than your walls.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, and if you have 2 floors, at a minimum, you probably need 2 radios.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Minimum. So that radiation pattern matters. If you want to know what it is, typically the manufacturer site will show you that.
Tell me how you really feel.
Hey, we got any Europeans listening out there?
Yeah.
Okay, so the pattern matters. Again, we talked about it would be like a glazed donut for an omnidirectional, which is what most access points tend to be.
Right.
So you do have certain antennas, though, that can change that can give you, generally, it will give you more punch.
Yeah.
So typically you would see this, especially outside.
Yeah, you say, you're, again, just using your words, you're saying punch. I would probably phrase it more like directional.
More direction and more distance.
Yeah.
Than a omnidirectional that's doing the full 360
Where you've
degrees.
got like a you can almost picture like a sphere, or like
Yes.
you said, the donut. This
The
is
donut.
more like a spear.
Yes, depending on the what the degree pattern is.
Yeah.
So when you get into that, you're going to be talking about, I've seen them referred to as directional. I've seen them referred to as sector and Yagi. Most of the time, those are going to be outdoor. Directional is just that. It's going to
They
point
look like
in a
big
given direction.
Like fins or cylinders or
They can, especially when you get into the sector.
yeah.
Directionals, I've normally seen those as a square or a rectangle.
Yeah, it's pointed though. At
Yes, so 90 degree, 45 degree,
Yeah.
depending on what your coverage that you're trying to get. The smaller that degree, the tighter that beam, the more potential you have for distance.
Yep.
When you get into a sector, typically those are going to go wider than 90. A lot of times you'll see those 130, 180. So I'm trying to cover everything in front of that antenna and out to the sides.
It's like a backyard.
Nothing behind.
Yeah.
Think of it as a way that some microphones will actually pick up.
I was about to say
You're
microphone.
You're going to
Exactly.
get rejection from the rear.
Rejection from the
it's
rear.
looking at the
and
front.
It's all at the front.
Yes.
Forward facing.
Yeah, so that's how a sector would work. Yagi, if you've ever seen them, they look like somebody pulled the guts out of a radio.
I'm sorry.
That's what it looks like. Basically, it looks like somebody took a piece of metal.
Sorry, I got to Google this real quick. Keep talking.
Go ahead. And they will have basically like they've cut out little fingers or fins, and it would mount. It looks like something that you could actually put inside of a Pringles can almost.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Now, these things have incredible punch or distance because of how tight they're making that beam.
That's crazy looking.
Yes, you'll see a lot of these too with hams, if we've got any ham radio guys out there.
There you go. Ham radio is exactly what I was
Yes.
thinking. This one looks like a what's the like the weed, or not the weed,
A hedge trimmer.
The hedge trimmer.
Yeah, there you
hedge
go.
trimmer.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that looked
that's
like.
a good picture of it. So, again, you can get ridiculous punch and distance with those,
Oh wow.
especially if you're trying to do like a site-to-site bridge. You're going to want something like that because you want that tighter beam, maximum distance, so you can get that reach.
Pasternak put a cylinder over it because it's so ugly. Oh man, sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine. So, keeping in the world of placement, you don't want to put your radios too close together.
No,
Again, you're not going to hurt the equipment,
no.
but they are going to overlap far
won't
too much in coverage.
Perform the way that they're supposed to.
Correct. And your device is not going to be happy. It's going, do I need to talk to you? Do I want to talk to you? And it's generally going to try to take what is the best signal or quality. And if that is fluctuating in any way, it's going to bounce from radio to radio and you're not going to be happy. So
That makes sense.
you want to keep 30 to 50 feet Depending on, again, this also comes down to how many walls you have.
How many walls you have? How many, like what,
What's the
again, what
material?
kind of directional,
Correct. Now, one thing you can do if you don't have a lot of luxury in where you can place your radios, again, this depends on how geeky your system is, you can turn down the transmission power
yeah.
to pull back how far they go.
Yeah.
So you get the overlap that you need for roaming, but not so much overlap that it's causing issues with your device.
Yeah. And the other thing we didn't talk about with distance is, like, again, remembering the difference between like 2.4 and 5 and 6 and how far they reach.
Yes. 2.4, you're going to get your best option. Again,
For distance.
You're going to lose bandwidth,
Yeah.
but you're going to get that distance.
Okay.
So placement is important. And again, you've got to take into consideration your walls. Most interior walls in homes in Texas typically are not insulated. So you've got gaps with drywall. You can get...
I feel like that became a code at some point.
I can tell you at least in 2007 it wasn't.
Really?
That's when my house was built.
You don't have insulation in between?
Not in the interior walls.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So I feel like for the longest time they didn't do it just because it wasn't necessary.
Outside is way more important.
Outside is far more important. So
Attic, way more important.
Absolutely.
Inside walls, not so much.
Know your walls, know your materials.
Know your materials.
Makes a big deal.
I guess even if you don't know your walls or materials and whatever, just understand that may be something that's playing into why your radio doesn't reach as far as you think that it should.
Correct.
Like we're saying 1,500 square feet is pretty typical for a single radio.
But that is kind of a best case scenario.
In a best case scenario, if you're like, I've got an 1,800 square foot house and I've only got, 2 rooms covered by this. Well,
yep.
There's some other stuff going on probably there.
There's a ton of factors. So a good rule of thumb is no more than 3 4-inch thick walls. If you've got insulation, you may start to see more degrading, especially depending on the type of material. If you've got rock wool,
yeah,
great for you for what that's capable of, especially killing sound. Your Wi-Fi is not going to be happy.
Sorry about you. That's just way too dense.
Yes.
Oh, and the other thing that I was going to say is, again, making sure that you understand the math of this, like in what we're saying. We're saying, like, if you put your antenna, I would just say antenna instead of the modem or whatever. If you put your antenna in the center of a 1,500 square foot house.
Yep.
I had an 1,800 square foot house for my first house. And where the cable came into my house for our network was on one side of the house. And I was like, well, I've got a, 1,800 square foot house. This should cover most of my house. No, it was like half of my house.
Yeah.
Why was it half of my house?
Placement is important.
Because it was covering my neighbor's yard too.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So again, general rule is 3. You can go 4 to 5, again, depending upon insulation, depending on how thick your walls are, materials. So that's just a good general rule to work with. If you have concrete walls, I highly recommend you put a radio on both sides of the walls.
Yep.
It is not pleasant in what it does to Wi-Fi. And even though some may get through, it is going to be degraded, and it is not going to be a good product.
It's not quite as bad as rock walls, but pretty bad, depending on how much steel is in it.
Yeah.
I guess.
So, like, if you're doing, what is it? Concrete, polymer. Oh, Cody did it on his house.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's a concrete wall with little chunks of metal instead of full rebar.
Yeah.
I should know this. My dad's in construction.
That stuff is terrible.
He's going to smack me upside the head if he hears
no,
this.
He's not.
So that can increase density, which can cause a bad experience.
Yep.
So placement is critical, especially when you know the materials of your house.
If I'm looking for gear, Kris, what are some names that you trust?
If you're going to do the stuff from Best Buy, I tend to like D-Link for one reason. And it's been a while since I've used the product, so if it's changed, I'm sorry. They used to have a parental piece built in that would work with OpenDNS,
Okay.
that you could set content filtering. You could pick your level, and you could even say, from this time to this time, I want it to be ridiculously strict.
What gear was this?
D-Link.
D-Link. Okay.
Yes.
You said that. I was like, huh?
Yeah, this was something that
D-Link.
D-Link that they had. Other manufacturers may have it now, but they're the only one that I'd ever run into it.
Yeah.
So I could say, when my kids are home, I know they're potentially, I'm not home yet, my wife's not home yet. Give me absolute maximum strict filtering.
Yeah.
No shenanigans in my house, please.
D-Link.
We get home, there's a little more accountability. You could back off to medium.
Because my wife doesn't like getting stopped from some of her shopping.
Correct. And then some of it, you could even do some custom levels of allow this, but actually block this.
Yeah.
So again, assuming they still have that feature, I really love them for that. Another good, dependable product is going to be Linksys. That used to be, it seemed like that used to be the go-to for everybody.
All over the place.
Back in the days of 802.11b and A and even G and N.
Yeah, I would say G and N for sure.
Everybody had a Linksys of some kind.
Now you may need to get the second level of Linksys, but
Correct. So the other thing that you can do with those types of systems, and some service providers are doing this now, is the newer generation, you could actually buy a repeater that is specific to your device. So in your scenario, you had your router, modem, all the Wi-Fi combo all the way on one side of the house.
right.
You're hurting on the other side. You could plug one of these into the wall. It would pair up and repeat the signal and give you improved coverage.
Yeah, that was actually what I was looking at before we moved.
Yeah. So that's not a bad way.
Linksys has a lot of these.
Yes.
By the way, there's a lot of options for repeaters.
I would highly recommend not trying to do repeaters off of repeaters. Don't do that. Just don't.
You could do, it's like anything else. You're just going to get a degraded signal.
You are.
You can do a repeater on either side.
Correct.
Or all four sides, however you want to.
Correct, depending on how it's laid up.
But.
So now if you don't care, yeah, you can absolutely take the product from the service provider. I don't recommend that. But for some people, if it works for them, great, it works for you.
But instead of doing what I did, best thing to do is just roll up your sleeves, get in the attic, run a cable into the center of your house.
Yes.
And run everything from the middle.
Yes. So the next level up is, again, it's still going to be Linksys, D-Link, TP-Link, some of the other vendors that are out there.
Yeah.
In what I've seen them sold in sets of 3, sets of 4, sets of 5. And it creates a mesh, which is sort of like having...
This is how Eero made its name, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think they're an Amazon product now, too.
Really?
I think so.
I think it's what's being sold with a local internet service provider.
Really?
Right now that shall remain nameless. I think that's what they're putting in.
Yeah, Eero is now an Amazon product.
Wow, there you go.
So in this...
Careful. We saw what they did with Alexa.
And what they've done with Ring.
I'm just saying.
Watch out. So you would have one of them that would basically be the router access point combo.
Right.
That could sit ideally in the center of your house, or it could be shifted. But then you have mesh points that you can put in other places around the house to extend your coverage. And it's a much better experience with doing mesh versus a traditional repeater.
Right. Because it's not the same thing.
It is not. No.
It's not.
Mesh is used especially outdoors on a lot of college campuses.
Right.
To extend Wi-Fi to the outdoors and cover large spaces.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that next level up. That can get a little more expensive depending on what you're looking at, but still a good solution for a lot of people. Then from there, then you really start cranking the geek knob up.
And you're like, this is my system.
Yes.
You may be giving me a connection to the internet, but I'm making this happen.
Yes, I have sovereignty and total control. So This is where you would buy your own modem.
Right.
Then you're going to buy your own network gear and build out your own network. So this is where like a Unify comes in. This is where TP-Link's Omada, which is a competitive piece that's out there, and even Meraki Go
Yeah.
that is out there. And so in this scenario, you would buy essentially a router. Some people call it a gateway. That is the first device that connects to your modem.
Right.
That handles all of that routing internal to your network and external going to the internet. Then from there, it may have a switch built in. If not, you're going to buy your own switch that's going to come off of that router or gateway.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, you're going to have fun in your attic and you're going to pull network cable.
Got to.
Yes.
It's important.
And I would highly recommend do it when you first buy your house. If you wait, odds are you probably won't go back and do it.
Or you'll put stuff up there and it'll make it a lot harder.
That's true too. So in this scenario, you'll run network drops from that switch out to where you're going to place your radios to give yourself the best coverage. And when you're going into that level, now you tend to have a whole ton of control. You can get as geeky as you want, or you can keep it as simple as you want. But you have, at that point, you have total control every aspect of your network.
Turn it up to 11.
Up to 11. So if you buy a Unify product, there is no recurring cost.
That's my favorite part.
Yes. Now, the give is the support isn't always the best.
I mean, who wants support, really?
So it's a give and take.
I'm not here to ask directions, Kris.
Yes. I'm not paying any ongoing, and I've got to see what's in the forums on their site to try to help. Same thing with TP-Link, Omada.
YouTube videos, that's all I'm saying.
There's probably a lot of that. And then even now, Meraki, who is a Cisco company, is getting into this with a product called Meraki Go.
Yeah.
It's technically geared towards small business, but it would work great in your home.
Great in your home.
The advantage to Meraki Go, depending on the individual, is you manage it all from the app, and you can also manage it from a cloud portal.
Okay.
Unify, there is an app as well.
I've been on it.
I use it a few times.
Yeah.
So, again, you can have that mobile ability to control and see what's going on. The Omada system has the exact same thing.
Does it?
Yes. Now, if you have deep pockets and you want to buy full-blown Meraki, more power to you. Those reoccurrings are going to sting, but if you've got deep pockets...
Not if you have deep pockets.
You're not going to complain.
Not in this inflation, whatever we got going on now.
Yeah.
Was this 30% inflation over the last 3 years?
Feels that way.
I'm just going to be quiet.
And for those that are out there and you want to go full-blown Cisco and you've got that capability and that knowledge, go for it.
I mean,
there are a lot of great, dependable places out there that you can buy quality used Cisco gear and Meraki, where you can get some really nice equipment at a cheap rate. Meraki, you've obviously got the reoccurring, but Cisco,
nope.
There's no reoccurring. Now you can't.
Now, if you did like a support contract or something like that, that's a different thing.
That's different. And the main thing you would get out of that is they'll help you with configuration if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
That's always a win.
Yeah.
You get the software updates, assuming the equipment still is getting updates. And with depending on what you've got, you could have within 5 business days, you could have a replacement product if it was to die. If you want to go more, you can get next business day. Wow. Depends on how much fun you want to have.
I mean, sure, why not?
So
made of money.
Again, what is your level of geek and how deep are your pockets?
And how deep are your pockets?
Yes.
Always those two questions.
Yes. And then if you're married, please talk to your wife first.
Don't do this on your own.
Yeah. Don't say, but dear, they told me on the show.
You might want to fill a cart and then figure out what that price actually is first.
Absolutely.
Eesh.
Yes.
Man, that was a good one. That was like
it was.
That was like drinking from a fire hose, though.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing the hammer.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get this in the show notes so anybody can go back and kind of look at what we're going over.
Well, there was a lot of numbers for sure.
There's a lot of
numbers. You're not
numbers.
going to remember that off the top of your head.
No.
Maybe some links to some of these devices or manufacturers and stuff like that too.
Yep. I'll be curious to see how well the transcript does this particular show.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
So,
all right. Thanks, brother.
you enjoyed it, man. Good time.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
All right. See you later.
See you, everybody. Hey, everybody. Beer and Gear is a value for value podcast. If you made it this far, then I would like to think you found some value from the show. If so, send us a boost with your modern podcast app like Fountain or Podfins. You can find modern podcast apps for Apple and Android at modernpodcastapps.com. When you send a boost, make sure to include a note that we can read on the show. Thanks, everyone.
Good try, scumbag.